What's up, everybody? It's Erin.
And Nicole. This is Dude That's Fucked Up.
A podcast.
A podcast.
A podcast. Welcome.
I don't own a pod, let alone a cast, to necessitate a podcast. So dumb.
Oh, man. Oh, my gosh. Well, I hope you're all well. Hope you're doing good.
Ramping up to the end of the year, or maybe slowing down to the end of the year. Whatever. I don't give a fuck. You do you.
Yeah. It's your life.
Yeah, it's your life.
It's now or never. You know? Bon Jovi.
I'm not going to live forever. Yeah. I ain't going to live forever. Excuse me.
Pardon me. Oh, man. Well, what do we got going on today? We got a good show, I think.
Got a good show. Oh, my God. So many notes. We really, what we were just saying right before we started recording, like, these notes, we got very verbose because we had very strong opinions about some stuff. So then it's like whole paragraphs of just like, we've already.
Just going off, yeah.
Just going off. So we'll, don't worry. We're going to capture all of that in today's episode.
Great.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Biz-wise, I would just say, would anyone like to leave us a review on your platform of choice, whether that's iTunes? I don't know if you could review stuff on Spotify, but any podcatcher you're on.
Yeah, share it with a friend.
Yeah, and share it with a friend. Ooh, that's oh no. I have something in my eye.
Oh,
it's gone.
Are you okay? Oh,
I think so. It was very stabby very quickly, and then it went away.
Oh, God. Hate that.
I know.
Oh, my God. I hope it wasn't like a rogue like hair or something. Rogue pube. I don't know.
Oh, my God. If it was a
Can
pube.
you imagine? Oh.
I hope it's mine, at least.
Yeah, at least.
Or Pete's. Anyone else's, I'm upset.
Don't want that. But not like that.
No. Would you rather have a pube in your eye or in your food?
Oof.
Like where you eat it. Like you're ingesting someone's pube. Or it's at least touching your mouth.
I'm going to go with mouth.
You always surprise me after all these years.
Well, think about all the like weird things you've done with, well, I don't know, like maybe, like dicks in your face. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, like, okay, but it's like someone's
that's
dick
consensual.
I'm familiar with.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, chances are, I don't know. Oh, well, I guess if it's at a random restaurant.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is what I'm saying. It's like someone's, like, what, like, you might not even ever know whose pube it was.
Yeah, and it's like, why is there a pube?
Why?
But also, like, why is there a pube that close to my eye? So.
The air. If it's the Santa Anas or whatever. You've seen the movie The Holiday.
Somebody's just airing their cooter or their junk out on their lanai.
They've hand-washed all their underwear, but, like, there's a pube that got stuck in the fabric. Sometimes that happens. Like,
and it turns into the feather from Forrest Gump.
That's exactly right.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, I think my answer is the eye.
Okay. All right.
Are you sticking with mouth?
Yeah, well, I think I might go with eye now because, like, if there's like genitals open air at a restaurant, who knows what the fuck is happening? Are they coming into the Alfredo sauce? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, don't order the rice pudding.
Yeah.
Oh,
Jesus. Oh my God.
I wouldn't eat that anyway. All right. Well, okay. So leave us a review.
We're off to a great start. If this is your first time listening. God.
Oh my God. It only gets worse from here. Don't worry. Or better, depending on, if you're a half full kind of person.
I mean. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay. Do you have a fucked up of the week?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I'm in a perpetual state of rage throughout the holidays. So, rage,
joy. It's like quickly oscillating.
Depression and anxiety all the time.
That sounds right.
Fluctuating from minute to minute, hour to hour.
Same.
So it's going to be really fun.
What a fun time for everyone.
Yeah, for everybody that is close to me. They're going to really enjoy my presence. Woo.
I love it.
Could be time for me to go back on Zoloft. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Hey, it's probably a good time. Oh, and if not now, maybe when January hits and like everybody gets the SADs, you know what I mean?
Yeah, just thanking God that I don't live on the East Coast, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Where it's actually cold.
And you can have sun and, some vitamin D, natural vitamin D.
Mm-hmm. What about you? Anything fucked up for you this week?
Oh, my God. Yeah, just a real quick one. On Sunday, Pete got these tickets to go see this guy, Tommy Stinson.
Okay. Is it a comedian?
No, he's a guitar player. He is one of the guitar players for the band The Replacements. Yeah, and then he was in Guns N' Roses for a while. So he played Alex's Bar, which is like a bar close to here. Love it. It was so cool. It was an outdoor show. Like everything was outside. Because
they have that big parking lot. That's cool.
Yeah,
or like that area outside. Yeah.
So they made that like when COVID hit into like their, the outdoor area or whatever. And so there was a show and it was really cool. Like his amp wasn't working. And so he like made it. It felt like a house party. Like he just like came into the middle of the audience and like we all gathered around and it was really cool. He's one of Pete's favorite musicians. And so Pete was just like in this like dream, and it was so sweet and it was really cool. But Pete was like, okay, doors open at 2. And I was like, oh, cool. So we get there like 2:10. We're like, oh, no one's here. Bitch, this concert didn't start until 8 p.m.
Where did he see 2?
Doors open at 2.
Just in general.
In general. And I don't think... Maybe it started at 6, actually. But anyway, we were there and we're like, no one's here. And I was like, this is so embarrassing. Like, this guy, is he like not cool? I don't know what's going on. And then
oh my God.
I'm like, look at the tickets. And Pete goes, oh, it starts at, it says doors open at 2. It starts at 6 or whatever. And I was like, oh no.
Why would they put that on the, doesn't make any sense.
Well, yeah, why are we here at 2? But there was like a food truck set up, which was like the best tacos I've had in my life. We'll sidebar on that after.
Oh shit!
Like,
okay.
I'll tell you, it was insane. Oh my God, these Tinga tacos! They truly like we ordered them twice. It was incredible, blew our minds. Anyway,
oh my God,
we had driven there because I'm like, I won't drink. I might have a beer, but like Pete can drink and have fun. But I'm like, oh, we're here at fucking 2. No, take the car back home and Uber back because I'm not leaving.
No, yeah,
I'm settling in.
We're getting toasty, yeah.
So we didn't get crazy, but I had some beers and some hard ciders, and they fucked up my stomach for a good 2 days, and I had the worst gas. Like it was so upsetting to all of us. Me and
everybody involved was having a hard time. Yeah,
Pete was like, I was like, I'm sorry. When it's like offensive to yourself, you're in a bad spot.
Yep.
So anyway, that's my fucked up of the week. But we're equals, so I can fart. Who cares?
Right.
Feminism.
Yeah. Feminism. 2021, soon to be 2022.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry. Lord. I fart too. Get over it.
I mean, if you didn't, it would come out of your mouth. So like, it's much better for everybody that it comes out of our butts.
That day it wasn't.
Oh. It didn't matter which end it was coming out of. It was bad. Okay.
It was bad all around. Bad for everyone.
Oh man. Speaking of bad for everyone, I don't know. I was gonna say my Jack is sick again. I call him my Victorian child because he's just can't
Poor Jack.
Poor baby. And speaking of Victorian children or Victorian era anything.
Yeah.
We got a Victorian era mess to talk about.
Yeah, baby.
Oh my gosh. This is a specific person we're talking about today. She's a bad bitch.
Oh my God, the baddest.
And we talked about her a few episodes back on our Halloween episode. We were talking about, ghouls and goblins and whatnot.
Hottest monster.
Frankenstein came up, and we talked about Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, very briefly, and wanted to do an episode on her. And so here we are. We're doing it.
Ta-da.
Also, recently, this is like what really brought her back into our brains, or at least mine. Recently, the New York Times posted an article saying H.G. Wells, along with two other men, invented the genre of science fiction. That is categorically untrue, although H.G. Wells contributed a lot to the genre.
Yeah.
Really, really kind of, locked it in, defined it really well.
Not saying the contributions of others weren't prolific, but saying inventing it is something else.
That is not what happened. He was not the one who invented the genre of science fiction writing. Many other people came before him, including Mary Shelley. Twitter dragged this article up and down the timeline, just dragged it all to hell, and let the New York Times and the author of this piece know that Mary Shelley and others before her had already defined this genre, and it was popping well before he was on the scene. Matter of fact, H.G. Wells was born 50 years after Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. So, and even earlier than that, I found out because of this Twitter thread, a woman named Margaret Cavendish wrote The Blazing World, which is about fucking aliens and shit that is like off the charts weird and is based in science, like of the time, and kind of stuff that's science now. Like she was talking about like submarines and wild shit that wasn't invented yet.
Oh my God.
Because that shit was published in 1666.
Oh my
God.
Okay,
that shit was already happening well like centuries ago. It's crazy. So the article itself is fine, but the headline straight up said that H.G. Wells invented the genre, and that ain't right. Nope. So we're just are letting everybody know that's not right. And we want to talk about Mary Shelley, who was one of the forerunners of the genre, and whose life and work was overlooked and overran by men constantly. And
even now, still while she's dead.
Still while she's been dead for a very long time, and is finally kind of getting a voice by literary scholars who are re-examining her work and finding a lot of like very interesting value and republishing her works, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But she was defined by her very haunting and very gnarly masterpiece, Frankenstein. And we're gonna talk about all of this shit. So just to start off, let's get into it. Let's just do the background on this bitch. She was She was,
a bad bitch from the start.
From the start.
I feel like also, we should preface, like, her life encompassed so much. We're not even going to get to it all. Her life is fascinating. I really want to read one of the biographies about her. Because, doing our research, we don't really get too, deep into everything. But there was some stuff that I saw that I was like, oh, I bet that's really interesting. But we don't have time. We're trying to focus on her broad strokes. This is a comedy podcast.
That's right.
But her life is fascinating. And first of all, she's born Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, and she's born in England in 1797. And this bad bitch was born to two badass people. Like her father, William Godwin, he was a political philosopher and an anarchist. And her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, was a philosopher and a feminist. Like, this is what their quote unquote jobs were. And I fucking gotta say, I love that Mary Shelley is basically a junior of her mother. Her mom's name was Mary. Her name was Mary. So hence, like, she's like the second, Mary the second. And also, her dad had to be pretty cool because she got to keep both names. Her middle name is her mom's maiden name, and then her last name is her dad's last name.
Yeah.
That is how she's born. Yeah.
I love it.
I fucking love it. And it's very cool, but also her beginnings were pretty tragic. Her mom died about a month after giving birth to Mary. And then, you know, her father did remarry a few years later when she was around 4 years old, I think, or she was pretty young.
She was really young, yeah.
Yeah. He remarried a neighbor, and they didn't get along, sadly, Mary and her stepmother, whose name was also Mary. A lot of Marys.
Very common name. Very common name. Back in that era, very common.
It's very common, yeah. And so, yeah, her upbringing was fine. Her dad was like super woke, really wanted her to get an education, you know, had to have been a feminist himself. And she was very well educated for a girl of the time. And most of her education was taught by her dad.
I mean, he was a very he was a
learned.
Political. Yeah, he was learned. He was a political philosopher. He had a lot of you know, people around him that were very intelligent. Also, like he ran in circles that were like, you know, the erudite, you know, kind of genre of echelons. Yeah. Very, very smart people that he hung out with. So yeah, she got the best of the education you know, he probably like ran with scholars. So like she was just getting this all filtered into her life constantly.
And she had he hired tutors for her and like also taught her, and which makes me think that they were wealthy. But then I looked into it a little bit more. They were not very wealthy because he was a thinker, and at that time they didn't, you know, they were artists essentially. Yeah.
So she grows up in this like very interesting household where she just she has like a weird relationship with her stepmother, but gets along with her stepsister. And her dad is like always on her side. And so it's just like kind of a like more modern way of living, I guess.
I think so. Yeah. Especially for the dad to be like an advocate for her education and stuff. That was not a thing.
Yeah. But somewhere along the line, something went wrong.
Scandal.
A scandalo caught up with Mary Shelley from a pretty young age when she got entangled with one of her dad's political followers, who is a romantic poet named Percy Bysshe, I want to say, but it's not. It's Bysshe.
Yeah.
Percy
Shelley.
But I know that's his middle name, but yeah, it's Percy Shelley.
Yeah, Bysshe.
Percy Bysshe Shelley. Yeah, he was a poet.
You know what that's like. You know what that is. That's like if you were a poet in the early 1800s, that's like today being fucking Bruno Mars. Like that's like you're singing and the panties are dropping. You know what I mean? It's like you're Bridgerton.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was hot. It was like he was a hot guy. He was like writing these like very sensual poems, and she was like, okay. She was 16 at the time.
Ooh, oh no. Ooh. And he was married. Oof. It was not a great start.
They fell in love. Yeah. They got together, fell in love. He's married. She's 16. They have this affair, and he and Mary and her stepsister Claire take off to Europe together.
Oh my God. Fucking Euro trip.
They like know that they're like doing something wrong. They're doing some fuck shit. But they don't care. They're just wilding out. They're like, let's go on vacay. Like, who cares what anybody thinks? Let's go.
Oh my God. They're like, we'll like caravan together. Like, you guys ride in that car. I'll ride in this car. Well, there's no cars, but you know, it's like.
They went through Europe at a very rough time too. France had just been in a horrible war, and they were like traipsing through France, and it was like fucking war torn and like villages were burned out and people were just like in the streets like dying and shit. And she like writes about all this. She kept many journals through her life. But yeah,
and they published them.
A lot of her journals have been published. So just a very interesting time for them to just like piece the fuck out, because they know they're not doing. They eloped basically, and they got out of Dodge.
Yeah, except they weren't legally married, because he was still married to his current wife technically, but also it's such like a young dumb thing. They're like, we're like, we don't care that France just was like decimated by war. We're gonna go fuck there.
I mean, honestly,
it's so tacky.
It's like somebody going to, I don't know, like Afghanistan right now or something. Yeah. It's like, it's pretty fucked up.
Hi, we're on vacation. Where's like the nearest discotheque?
Yeah.
It's like, get the fuck out of here.
Oh, it's so rough.
They were young. They were young.
Yeah, so they're just like traipsing around Europe, like
fucking Crossroads and like Britney Spears and Zoe Saldana and Taryn Manning, and they're just like, oh, like fucking Thelma and Louise until the bad part, you know. But
yeah.
They're just like having so much fun, and then she gets pregnant. They get dropped on their heads back to reality real quick when they realize that Mary's pregnant, and they have to go back to I guess London or England, just wherever in England. Yeah.
And he's like, oh shit, my wife that I'm still legally married to is also pregnant. So, and you know, I'm still married to her, so I don't know, I gotta like fix that. So it's really rough. They get back to reality, and Mary has their baby 2 months prematurely. The baby dies. Unfortunately, it's very, very sad. She writes about it in her journals, and it's heart-wrenching. And then Percy's wife, Harriet, commits suicide pretty shortly after they get back. And everything's a shit show. Yeah. They are ostracized from society because they know that Percy did a very dishonorable thing by leaving his wife. Like you just don't do that anytime, anywhere. Like it sucks. Yeah, but then after that, Mary and Percy were able to legally wed. And they did that in 1816. Yeah, so they got married though to help Percy legally assume custody of his 2 children by Harriet.
His wife that had passed away.
Yeah, Percy's lawyers advised him to improve his case by marrying. I think he wrote a lot about how he thought marriage was a social monopoly and like because he was an adherent of this kind of anarchist, kind of bohemian way of thinking. And so he was like not into it, but still like it made sense and legally would have been better for him to get custody of these two children he had with his estranged wife. So his lawyers were like, yeah, get married so you can get the kids. And so he and Mary got married in 1816, like we said. By the time they were getting married, she was pregnant again after she had this premature birth. Horrible, awful.
Oh, my God.
It's so sad. And so they got married December 30th, 1860 in London. And this is where I'm just going to go ahead and say Percy's a real piece of shit, if you didn't already catch that vibe.
Picking up the vibes we're putting down.
Yeah. He had no money.
Yeah.
First and foremost.
Not that makes you a good person.
No, but
he's like out here making all these kids and going on these fucking endless vacations with no money.
Yeah, he was really... really not in reality with this shit. They were ostracized from society, like we said, and Mary's father, who like this is like a really rough time, like for Mary. She has a piece of shit husband, no money, ostracized by society. Mary's father, who she thought was gonna, like, when they came back from this, like, you know, like hot threesome road trip or whatever, thought that her dad was gonna be like, okay, totally, like, support your lifestyle.
Yeah.
He was like, no, this is bad. You should not have done that. You like fucked a married man, and a lot of bad things happened because of that.
Yeah.
So no, I kind of like don't want to talk to you. So he turned his back on her, and Mary and Percy moved in with Claire, her stepsister, who they went on the road trip with. So they're all like hanging out, doing their bohemian radical political poet life together at Claire's house. And Percy Shelley had all these like cool, like novelist poet friends that would come over and hang out. Thomas Jefferson Hogg, who is a famous writer, and Thomas Love Peacock, another famous writer of the time. They'd all come over and hang out and, you know, just eat their food and drink their wine. And I think Mary didn't exactly love that, but, you know, she didn't get the, like, the home bliss that she thought she was going to have maybe when she signed up for this relationship with a married man, I guess. I don't know. She was, again, she was a child when this all started. She's probably 17 or 18 by this time.
And also, like, I don't know, still in this time, women just got pregnant. Like, it was really hard to have sex just for the fun of it and to be young and free. Like, women just, you know, I don't think people talked about how not to get pregnant. And also, I think it was like, you know, there was such like shame and stuff around having sex out of marriage that, like, you just didn't ask anyone. Or
you just hoped and prayed you didn't get pregnant, basically.
But she did a lot.
She sure did. So she's again pregnant. And also sometimes Percy would leave home for, you know, a few weeks at a time to dodge creditors
and fuck other women.
Yeah. So meanwhile, like they're living with her stepsister. Her like not quite legal but legal husband is like bopping in and out trying to get away from creditors. He has his buddies coming to the house constantly. Meanwhile, Mary is pregnant, sick all the time. Her dad's disowned her, and she also had to cope with the fact that at the time, Percy, before his wife died, had another kid on the way with his estranged wife. So this is like all is very shitty. Oh, and on top of all that, Percy was definitely fucking her stepsister Claire.
Yeah.
This is a mess, guys. This is a Victorian era fucking mess.
It was such a mess. It reminds me of The Great. That show on Hulu, which is I just watched the second season, which is so fucking good. Everybody,
I'm pacing myself a little. I'm like taking my time.
No,
savoring it.
I couldn't slow down. I just watched it all in like
so
2 days.
Good.
Oh my god, the second season, especially because the morning show second season has been such garbage. This was like I'm so happy this second season is good, but it's evocative of that because of like I'm cheating on you with everyone. Like you just have to like accept it.
Yeah,
because you're a woman and no one cares about you.
Also, like, I mean, she was again like, I'll keep coming back to this. She was extremely young, and she was raised in this environment that was like very like, you know, open and free, and kind of contrast with the times in a way that like made everything like, I don't know, that much more intense. And so she was like kind of indoctrinated into this kind of like radical like way of thinking, I guess. But it was just like a bit much for a young person of a young woman of the time to like cope with. And so she was just like going with the flow and open to free love, and you know, being with an older married man just like was totally fine, I guess, like in that world that she'd grown up in. So also it was just the times, like we cannot really compare the fact that like this man basically, what we would now say, he groomed her, and she was like stuck in this kind of abusive like cycle to like stay with this man and be in love with this man for her entire life. So
well, because once you're like impregnated and are married in that era, you can't like leave that situation gracefully.
No, there's allowed. There's no options, basically.
Yeah, there's no options. It's sad. I mean, he did groom her and she was a child, but also it like wasn't that out of the ordinary at that time. Like she would have been married off, probably not, you know, but pretty soon.
But also the ostracized, you know, the ostracization that they faced when they came back still shows that there were very, you know, deeply held values that like despite this like kind of radical like, you know, whatever
true
bohemian lifestyle that, you know, they proclaim to be a part of, there was still rules that they had to follow. And her father was a prime example of that, like where she was kind of shocked that he did not support her or embrace her when she came back, because, you know, he still was like, no, you're ruined.
Right. Like you're impure now.
Yeah. So it's like it was all very contradictory and it was fucked up. Anyway, so she still made, you know, the best of it. She finally she got close with Percy's friend, Thomas Jefferson Hogg, again, a very famous writer. She really didn't like him at first, probably because, you know, he's invading their space, and she's just
he's always at their house eating their food.
Yeah. But no, they ended up actually becoming very good friends, very close. And it seems like there's some evidence that Percy wanted Mary to become lovers with Hogg.
So he would feel less guilty about all his lovers? Yeah.
To kind of assuage some of his guilt, I guess. Also very reminiscent of The Great. And so, it was very weird. Mary was not into that, though. She did believe in free love, apparently. Again, the environment she was brought up in. But she was in love with Percy Shelley and did not want to go fuck other men, even though Percy definitely fucked other women. So this man had her all fucked up. And so she unfortunately became pregnant by this man 3 more times after her initial first pregnancy that ended in a premature birth that was tragically very sad. That her first baby died. And only one of her children with this man lived into adulthood. Fucking this time so hard for kids.
Her life in that way was very tragic.
Yeah. But even though, despite all of this hardship, despite all the tragedy, despite all the like just fucking tough circumstances that she was in, she was extremely talented and had a fantastic mind, and it's evidenced by all the journals she kept, and she actually had a very amazing writing career. And that's started kind of in May of 1816 when Mary, Percy, and their 4-month-old son traveled to Geneva with Claire.
Claire Claremont. Her last name was Claremont. Her name was Claire Claremont.
Claire Claremont, her stepsister. They they traveled to Geneva because they planned to spend the summer with the poet Lord Byron, who had an affair with Claire, and she was pregnant with his baby. So,
y'all, everyone, wrap it up. Wrap it up.
They don't know what that means.
Oh my God. But Lord Byron, obviously, very famous poet.
Very, very famous.
And they're fucking hobnobbing with this dude.
Yeah, they're all running in these circles. Like Sorry, I gotta move my chair. I was like very uncomfortable. Yeah, like a lot of these people are just like running in the same circles. And so, yeah, Claire gets pregnant with Lord Byron's baby. They go on this like basically like writer's retreat all together.
Air quotes. I think it was an orgy.
Oh, probably actually.
I mean, they're all fucking each other, maybe potentially anyway.
Yeah.
And if the girls aren't switching partners, the men certainly are.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. But yeah, it was them, Lord Byron, Lord Byron's physician, I guess, John William Polidori. And they just like wrote all day, talked about like philosophy, and stayed up telling stories to each other. And so
total nerds.
Just, I mean, what else is there to do? They don't
have
like,
know. Yeah.
They don't have a Scrabble or
Jenga.
Or Jenga to play or Monopoly. Yeah. So.
But cards existed, right?
Yeah.
Playing cards?
Yeah, definitely.
But still, you know, I don't know. They're writers.
Yeah, that playing cards, you can only do that so much. Yeah. Yeah, these are creative people. So they stay up late telling stories, and they kind of have like this little contest where they're like, all right, we're going to do short stories, and they're ghost stories. So everybody has to write a story, and whoever like has the best one wins. I don't know what they win, but
like fucking the accolade of the best story. And then everyone's like, oh, that's
and they're
the
like,
best prize.
Yeah, and it's like, well, they're competing against Lord Byron. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It'd be
well,
so
he writes
intimidating.
poems.
Yeah, he doesn't write scary stories. So.
Yeah. And they were all like, they all went into their own little corners of the cabin or whatever, and they're all like,
yeah, and
trying to out scare each other.
And throughout the couple days, like everybody kind of writes their little stories, and everybody's like, okay, Mary, it's your turn. She's like, I don't have anything yet. But then one night they were up late talking about like life stuff, like,
yeah.
And she was talking about, I think she probably had this breakthrough by talking about her first pregnancy, her first baby, and how she probably didn't get into all of it, but in her journal she talks about how and this is like so sad, it's like total trigger warning, like how she just woke up to find the baby had died in the night, and how she was like wishing, because the baby was born 2 months early, and back then that's just like there's just no way. The science was not ready for that, but she was always talking about how she wished there was just some way she could bring the baby back from the dead, basically.
Oh my God.
And I think this like idea kind of started to form a seed of an idea in her over the months, and then like at this retreat, that like talking about like the life and everything that had happened to her, it kind of like sparked something in her, and she like woke up at like 2 a.m. or she couldn't go to sleep, but she wrote the story at like 2 a.m. in this like fucking, I don't know, castle or wherever they were staying, or cabin. I don't know.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
Farmhouse. No, it was probably nice. It was in Geneva. It was probably like a, chateau of some sort.
Chateau.
Yeah. And, so she has this divine inspiration, and she writes the short story that is the precursor to Frankenstein, basically, that night.
Yeah, it's like the bones, she was like quote unquote possessed with like this story. She just had to get it out. She just wrote until she had what was the bones of Frankenstein. And it's very cool. These pages, they still exist. Like there are pages in her writing from that night that are like musings of this novel, which is totally incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so with the support, they were like, "Holy shit, this is
good.
Insane.
I wish I wrote this."
Yeah, everybody was like, she tells her story, and it's like so like it's so original and so gruesome and so like obviously like an allegory for something else, you know, that they're like, this is fucking good, write this book. So
Lord Byron's like, "Oh, I only wrote There Once Was a Guy from Nantucket."
Yeah.
Dang, this is
like,
really good.
Oh, I just wrote this story about a guy who lived in a toilet who'd scratch your butt at night when you go to the bathroom. Oh, man.
I just wrote this story about how this girl had a zit on her face, and when it popped, it was spiders.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah. The story I was talking about is actually an original by my dad.
Is it?
Called The Butt Scratcher. Yeah. That was he'd tell it around the campfire every night when we would go camping.
I feel like we've talked about that.
Yeah,
oh my God. I'm glad I never heard that story, because camping is already scary and using porta potties are already scary. And then if I heard someone was going to scratch my butt.
Anytime you go to an outhouse.
Oh, no.
No, the story is like, it was a guy who lived with a horrible lady who he chopped up into pieces and threw her in the outhouse. And
oh my God.
Yeah, my dad told us this. He made this story up. Like he like fucking Mary Shelley'd this story out one night, and he just like told us this when we were like 7 years old or something. Just
Don't
totally
let him tell
traumatized
that to Jack.
He will.
Oh no, Jack's not ready for it. He's such a sweet
not
angel.
Yet. No, not yet. No.
Yeah, not yet.
Anyway, so Jesus. So yeah, with the support of Percy Shelley, Mary published this novel, Frankenstein, or at the time it was also called The Modern Prometheus, is how it was first published. And she published it anonymously in 1818. So,
which, do you think that was because she was a woman?
Yes. I mean, have you ever read Frankenstein?
No.
It's gruesome. It's intense. It's very morbid and horrifying. And I think if people would have known that a woman had wrote this, first of all, it was just like women didn't write. I mean, women wrote, but like it was not anything like this, you know? Yeah. It was poetry or romance or whatever, soft, gentle things. And
Wuthering Heights or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, women wrote like gnarly stuff, of course, but like this was gnarly. This was metal. This was like
metal, yes.
You know, this was something that the people hadn't seen before. This was original and this was intense, and like she didn't want to fuck up her reputation more than it already was fucked up. So
poor thing.
Yeah. So she was a little traumatized and she was scared. You know, this was like this was a work that came from her that was very, very intense, and she didn't really know how people were going to receive it, and her. So I think she didn't really have any other choice but to do it anonymously at first. So I don't know.
Well, I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later too, I think, but this is where some of the criticisms of her maybe not writing it all on her own started, because it was anonymous initially, and Percy had really strongly encouraged this, like been very vocal in his support about getting this book published. And he also wrote the preface for it, like in the book, he wrote the preface. And so critics and historians have talked about and argued that he co-wrote this book. But, and we'll get into this a little more later, but in the Halloween episode, we also talked about how this was pretty much this is bullshit. And it's very easy to debunk this. And this is just an example of people looking to like discredit women essentially and their contributions. So it's pretty fucked up. And also we should point out, like, this was not her only work. Frankenstein is her most famous piece of literature because of what it did for literature in general. But she was writing fucking novels, short stories, travelogues, biographies, journals, and she was editing all these famous people's work as well, which should tell you she was not a one-hit wonder.
No.
And in fact, in 1826, pretty quickly after she published Frankenstein, she published another sci-fi novel called The Last Man, and it's a dystopian novel about, guess what? Trigger warning, a global pandemic that almost extinguishes the human race. And so, and people even argue that's even more of a blueprint for science fiction. And, like, she's creating all this stuff. And people still, to this day, will argue that she didn't write it. And it's so fucked up.
Well, and also, so fucked up. I think a lot of it too. We'll get to the reasons why. We'll talk about that all later. But yeah, so since nobody knew that she'd authored Frankenstein during the first printing, she didn't get credit for it until it was printed in French in 1921, and then a second printing. Oh, wait, 1821.
1821.
Sorry, not 19. She didn't get credit until it was printed in French in 1821, and then again during a second printing in 1822.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was originally printed in 1818, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so it was printed in 1818. It made the rounds. No one knew it was hers. And then she starts getting credit for it. And people are like, oh, interesting. And that second printing, her father was strongly behind her doing a second reissue printing so that she would get money for it.
Yeah, she needed money.
Yeah, she needed money. Her and her husband needed money. And so he was like, hey, you need to put your name on this thing. You made it. Like, get over it.
Take credit for your work.
Yeah. And she was regarded as a serious writer, but she certainly wasn't paid for it, And that's a thing of the time as well. Like, it just wasn't, it was an art. And you were kind of freelancing all over the place. And so, yeah, she was a serious writer, but she didn't have much in the way of money to show for it.
Yeah. So. And going back to her dad really quick. He came back around to
accepting her
and her marriage to Percy only after they got legally wed. Like,
right. Yeah. After she was legitimized. Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
So.
Rude. That's fucking rude.
Anyway, so there's a ton more we could say about that, which we will in a bit shortly, but I just want to talk real quick about there's this rumor that I'd read about her a long time ago, and I didn't know if it was true or if it was just like something that somebody'd made up to be like to add lore to somebody who had written something very spooky.
Oh.
And this is real. So this is probably the most Victorian, romantically gothic, morbid thing I have ever heard of. Like, honestly, Edgar Allan Poe could never.
He wishes.
So this is a story about Percy's heart. So Percy tragically drowned on July 8th, 1822, when he was caught in a storm on his boat. And he was only 29 years old.
Oh, that makes sense why the dad supported the second press of the book with her name on it. She needed money because her husband died.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Percy had gone out on a sailboat and got caught in a storm, drowned. And his body and those of his two sailing companions were found 10 days later, identifiable only by their clothing. Shelley had a book of John Keats poems in his pocket, and that's how he was identified. That detail makes it sad, but not that sad because karma's a bitch, because likely he was off fucking other women.
He for sure was.
When he was cremated, his heart did not burn. This is extremely creepy, but modern day physicians believe it might have been because it calcified due to an earlier bout with tuberculosis.
Whoa.
Which is crazy. Like, I didn't know that was a thing or could happen.
Like it hardened?
Yeah, like I guess it like the blood vessels around are like it's like a muscle, so the muscle itself kind of calcified, and like a protective shell basically around the heart had formed.
Oh my! How did he like live still?
I don't know. It's crazy. So
God.
When they burned the body on the funeral pyre, the heart just like stayed intact, and so Percy's friend Lee Hunt grabbed that creepy ass heart out of the funeral pyre, and he held on to it until he was able to give it over to Mary.
Oh my God.
And apparently Mary kept the heart in a silken shroud, like a little Crown Royal bag or something. And,
one of those Danish cookie tins.
Yeah. You think there's a sewing kit in there? It's a heart. It's a calcified heart.
Oh my God.
And she's apparently she said to have carried it with her nearly everywhere for years.
Oh my God. That's so cool.
Let's talk, dude. She's fucking metal as fuck,
metal. Dude. Mary Metal Shelley.
She rules. I mean, it's creepy and gross. I hate it, but also,
I don't know. Why am I thinking? Yeah, I wish my dad's heart was calcified so it would have survived. That would have been cool.
I know. It's like,
I would have put it in like a little shadow box or something.
I know, right? Like, I don't know. It's like,
yeah,
it's very, wow. It's a
token.
Lot of all of the organs. Like, it wasn't his spleen. It wasn't his kidney.
I don't want those ones.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It was his heart.
It wasn't his anus. It's like
anus.
All of him burned, ma'am, except his anus. Would you like it?
Oh my God.
Miss Shelley, we're sorry to say his foreskin did not burn. It had been patinaed.
His left scrotum is still intact.
His scrotal skin was so syphilis it hardened.
You know, that's actually what the little bag is that she carried around the heart. It was a sack. Oh God. Anyway.
Oh my God. Did she have to have a fucking cobbler stretch it out to hold the heart?
Yeah.
Or maybe he had large balls.
She like Ed Gein that shit. I don't know.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so she carried around this calcified heart. And in 1852, a year after she died, Percy's heart was found in her desk, and it was wrapped in the pages of one of his last poems, Adonis.
Ooh.
So it's like kind of a heartbreaking detail that it was like she had it and she had wrapped it in one of his poems. Like, it's so poetic. And eventually the heart was buried in the family vault with their son, Percy Florence Shelley, when he died in 1889. Man, I don't know. Listen, if I die before DJ and he doesn't carry around my fucking heart with him, I'll haunt his ass.
Assuming it's calcified.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or you could probably have that done these days.
Yeah, like just like a quick little procedure.
Yeah, just like calcify the heart real quick. Thank you.
I want to do like a full Egyptian burial and just like have my heart in a noose in a beautiful vase preserved.
And instead of calling it Satan's kiss, it'll be Aaron's kiss.
Mm-hmm.
with like your wedding date or something.
Yeah, just get it engraved. Get it like dipped in gold or something.
Just do that now while you're alive.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for? You can make your asshole into chocolate.
That's true. I've seen that. Yeah.
Might as well just gold dip it.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of these feel poetic, like a lot of the details of this, but it's like, well, they were poets and like writers and like.
But of all the people that like a calcified heart could have happened to, you know, it's like.
But not that part of it, but like that she carried it around and like his poem was wrapped around it. Like they were that type of people, you know?
Always like doing the most.
Yeah, doing the most. They're like
messy as hell, doing the most.
They're writing the script for all this shit. They're just like, what would be the most dramatic, heart-wrenching, like whatever, heart-hardening.
Heart-hardening, yeah. Well, there it is.
Oh my God. I mean,
he did not deserve her, first of all.
He didn't. Yeah. She never remarried. Like she
loved him, man.
She loved him. She tried to date because she was like, I think I need a husband because this society is bullshit. I'm not a whole person, and also I need money. But she survived on like, I think her father-in-law like gave her an allowance. And so, and you know, she made money by editing things and writing still, but it wasn't a ton of money. But
yeah, I think actually while Percy was alive, one of his like uncles or something died, and he got money from him. So they were like, she had enough to like keep her, but still, yeah, it's all tough.
It's tough, yeah. And I mean, again, there's all these details we're not going to get to, but skipping ahead, just talking about her legacy, because that's why we're here today. People discrediting her and her contributions. But so she passed away in 1851, and she had one son that survived. And I think he was like, I forget his name. Was it Percy Shelley?
It was Percy. Yeah. Percy Florence Shelley.
Percy Florence Shelley, yeah. So he and his wife tried to downplay, in the wake of his mother's death, like how radical Mary Shelley was and how much of an impact she had, or maybe she didn't have an impact at the time necessarily, but how much of her work was like politically driven. And they were trying to do this to like quote unquote Victorianize her memory, which I've never heard this phrase, but it makes sense.
It's I think it's like to make her more of like a proper like
lady.
Yeah. While she was living in some crazy shit. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Free love. Like,
they were like, no, that didn't happen. We don't know anything about that. And they like really downplayed it. And so did like all of her friends.
Everybody in the Victorian era was a freak, though. Let's be honest.
I know.
Like, don't even try. Don't even try. Yeah.
They were just normal. Probably, but it felt freaky back then.
Yeah.
But like even her journals, you know, they were publishing like pieces from her, but they would censor it and try and spin all these biographical documents. And they were like, no, she was not that reformist. Like she was pretty conservative, all this stuff. And that was not what her work was about. And that's kind of a big reason that she wasn't looked at as prolific to literature as she ultimately was. Because
they buried a lot of her work.
And they whitewashed it, essentially. They really like purified it.
Yeah, exactly. And like you're saying, a lot of what she was writing within the sci-fi genre, like that's what sci-fi is. It's often allegorical for whatever, you know, fucked up thing the author wants to highlight, or whatever political, like, you know, whatever political leanings they may have. It's sci-fi, the genre itself is always allegorical, almost always.
It's because it's generally like future leaning, and it's like, what, like if you wanted to see this idea played out, what would that look like? So, and that's what her writing is. That's a lot of what she explored in Frankenstein and The Last Man. And because they were kind of like censoring her posthumously, her body of work was pretty much out of print. Like Frankenstein obviously survived, but like they stopped printing her other books. They didn't print any of her journals, or like she just kind of like, I don't know.
They erased her.
They erased her. They kind of buried her work and didn't look at the whole body of her work as a whole.
Well, and also like the other writers that she knew and were peers with, like they respected and knew her. And but like as they also started dying and getting older and, you know, fading away from the, you know, influential circles, like all of her stuff faded away too. There was nobody there to like, you know, and also like there were other people who wanted her erased too. She still had people around in her life that like didn't love the fact that she had this like it was just she had this like whole life that was like very radical, like you're saying. It was people really did try to bury her and her own son.
Well, and you know, I'm sure his intentions were like he wanted his mother to be, you know, known as a lady and known. Well, you know,
it was for his own reputation and his well. So it's not totally right. It's not totally pure, but you know, it's they're all people of their time, but it's just really unfortunate because again, like a lot of her work went out of print. People did not care or know about it until roughly she died in 1851. 1980 is when some of her works came back, and the only reason is because a few women came out and were like writing and publishing, you know, writing about her and publishing her work. So in 1980, the first volume of Mary Shelley's Complete Letters was published by Betty T. Bennett. And then it wasn't until 1989 when the first biography of Mary Shelley was published, written by Emily Sunstein. Can you imagine a life this wild, a life this interesting? No one gives a shit. And she wrote one of the most incredible stories of our time that like has spurred genres upon genres. And until 1989. And the story of Frankenstein has been told in so many different ways. Like,
oh my God.
Like
it was movies. It was made into films before a biography was done about her. And she fucking wrote that shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's one of the most like iconic stories, not of our time, but like of any time, you know?
Of any time. It is so iconic.
We still use the word Frankenstein is like it's part of our like in our lexicon, like, and we use it as a verb. It's you know, it's totally
you fucking something goes wrong with a recipe or you drop something, you're like, I gotta Frankenstein this thing together.
Yeah exactly.
It's so upsetting. And
another thing that's so going back to like when she was still alive, kind of sort of another thing that's finally getting cleared up after many decades of misogynistic assertions that Mary Shelley couldn't possibly have written a big book all by herself because she's a woman, let alone many books. Her husband must have basically written them. Like that was the assertion for a very long time. Even while she was alive, and still is.
Certain critics and historians still argue this today.
Yeah, but it's finally getting cleared up after all these decades and centuries later, that she did indeed write the shit out of these books. There's a literary scholar and poet, Fiona Sampson. She wrote about the 200th anniversary of Frankenstein, and she asked, why hasn't Mary Shelley gotten the respect she deserves? And she noted that in recent years, Percy's corrections visible in the Frankenstein notebooks held at the Bodleian Library in Oxford have been seized on as evidence that he must have at least co-authored the novel. In fact, when I examined the notebooks myself, I realized that Percy did rather less than any line editor working in publishing today. All he did was help edit.
He was an editor.
And he helped, yeah, and he like gave like suggestions like you would if you write a book nowadays or anytime. Anyone who writes a book lets their spouse or their partner or their best friend, or they let many, many, many people read the copies before they publish the book so that they can get like vibe, thoughts, and feelings.
That's like, I mean, they're two separate jobs. They're two completely separate jobs. One's a writer, one's an editor. They've never been the same thing ever.
No. And you know, he might have had some input to help like clarify some of her like her lines of thought or her, you know, tying things back to a theme or whatever. But
who gives a shit? He didn't write it. That's insane. That's so. This is, I don't think I like named her or this specific thing, but this is like loosely what I referenced in the Halloween episode where it was like people have been coming after her because they look at her body of work and they're like, well, he has like some scribbles in the fucking margins. And it's like.
And that's supposed to be the evidence that he wrote the whole book? No.
It's so dumb, but it is misogyny.
And also it's just like it's one work where like there's, you know, he wrote like the preface for and like a couple like notes in the margins, whatever. Yeah. And that has like taken down her entire legacy, her entire body of work. No. She was a prolific writer. She wrote so much and we only know Frankenstein. So this Fiona Sampson, she published her findings in a book that she wrote called In Search of Mary Shelley in 2018. And this is one of the many biographies written about Mary Shelley. So definitely check that out.
I hope Fiona Sampson's husband didn't edit her book because then people are going to think she didn't write it.
Yeah, my God.
Oh, so Lord. Fucking dumb. Okay, well, final thoughts. I love this woman so much. She's so metal. I'm so glad you said that because it is exactly just what I want to like think of her as. She was so cool. We didn't even get to so much stuff. Like she was blackmailed at a certain point. She, you know, we said one of her kids survived. She lost 3 children that she birthed. Horrible. And she had miscarriages. Like this woman... And at the same time was writing and creating a genre that people, I mean, we wouldn't have anything without Mary Shelley.
I don't understand. Like I was reading, The Guardian published this article about how women who are creators have always had to figure out a way to carve out time for themselves to create the things that they create. Yeah, whereas men,
emotional labor.
Whereas men, men, they have always had this time and space to do that. Yeah. And she, like, I mean, there was like many, many examples, like, you know, just where women would be nursing their baby and like writing notes, like shit like
you
that.
do.
Like I do. Yeah. But, you know, but men, they would, like, there was like so many examples of men like having their wives who would just like have everything perfectly fine-tuned to their like comings and goings so that they never had to fucking think about anything but their creative process and anything but their writing, anything but their philosophy, whatever. So it's just, yet women have persevered despite the fact that they have no time or space nor a body of their own to like to do the things that they creatively need to do. Not only are they creating works of art, works of literature, works of whatever, they're creating actual human life. And that is where Mary Shelley, that is where Frankenstein comes from. The fact that she created life and that life was taken from her. Yeah. And and that idea of bringing back that life, like,
oh my God,
you cannot possibly, nobody could possibly fathom that except for the person that went through and that was her.
Yeah.
That was fucking her. And there's nothing like more, I think, visceral and like horrifying than childbirth.
Ugh.
And the death of that child. Like, fucking hell. So, my God. Anyway.
Oh my God. Yeah.
There's just so much.
She's done so much for storytelling. I read a stat about like maybe like 2/3. I don't remember the number, but it was like a majority of people discover the story of Frankenstein or the idea of Frankenstein, not even through her novel anymore, but through works of film and in, you know, even if it's not, you know, like one of the more well-known Young Frankenstein or whatever, you know, it's
great movie.
If it's not one of those, you know, it's like a character in a Disney film or what, you know, whatever. I don't know. But that's people's way in. Yeah, Frankenweenie. But without her, we wouldn't have any of that. And that's what an impact that her work made. And I really want to read The Last Man. It sounds really good. And it's, you know, people argue that it's even more of a blueprint for sci-fi. But we literally wouldn't have any of those works. And people like fucking H.G. Wells stand on the shoulders of people like Mary Shelley and need to be credited.
That's right.
As such. And that's the point. That's the whole point.
Bless. That's all we wanted to talk about, really, is just that this woman needs her due. And I hope that you read more about her. I want to read the biography that the Fiona Sampson wrote, In Search of Mary Shelley. And if you want to read like any more about her, there's a really good New Yorker article by Jill Lepore called The Strange and Twisted Life of Frankenstein. And it talks a lot about Mary Shelley's life. It's very interesting. Good long form article. It's a New Yorker article. So, you know.
Yeah.
And I just stay away from the New York Times with this shit, man. God.
Oh no. Was it I don't even know if it was an opinion piece or something, but
no, it was a fine article. It just
made some mistakes.
It led with a false assumption that you know, just totally excluding a lot of people that had come before H.G. Wells. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Well, yeah, we wanted to cover Mary Shelley anyway, but this gave us the perfect excuse to come in hot.
Real hot
with strong opinions. We just wanted to come after her husband at first, but then we came after everyone.
Yeah. I don't know if that's advisable, but it is what it is.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
All right. Follow us on social medias.
Yeah. Go to DTFU Podcast everywhere.
Yeah.
It's at DTFU Podcast everywhere. DTFUpodcast.com is our website. Check that out. Send us a note.
Oh, fun. A topic
suggestion. Let us know if you like this. Write a review.
Watch our YouTube channel. Watch our faces.
Yeah, go to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/DTFU Podcast. We have so much more content on there. 3 different patron levels to choose from. It's great. Check it out.
All right.
That's all I got. Listen here. Be excellent to yourselves
and each other.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.